I don't know how profound I'll be this evening, but we'll find out. May not be at all. My name's Bill Shade, and I am an alcoholic. I'm extremely grateful to be here or anywhere. I am a member of the Common Cause group of Alcoholics Anonymous. We meet on Wednesdays and Sundays in Carthage, North Carolina, and at 8 o'clock on Wednesday at the United Methodist Church, and Sunday at 6. Sobriety date is February the 5th, 1986. And I need to say a few things before I get started. I am not a spokesperson for Alcoholics Anonymous. I am simply trying to share my experience, strength, and hope, and share with you all what the 12 steps have done for me. In the event that I offend anyone, I apologize on the front end. In the event that I offend somebody, please go to another meeting and talk about it. Don't take it home with you and ruminate on it. For many, many years, I had a propensity to do this, and I would drop F-bombs and all kinds of other stuff. And I was doing it many years ago, and this fella came up to me after the meeting, and I was in Winchester, Tennessee, and he said, "Son, you got a great message, but nobody can hear you because of the way you say it." And of course, I told him exactly what I thought of him and what he could do. And it took 20 some odd years for me to hear what he said. And one of the things that amazes me about this recovery program that we do is how long it takes me to hear things sometimes. And sometimes I hear it immediately. Not often. You know, I still find it fascinating to be invited somewhere, because I spent half my life being invited to leave, and I was told to never ever come back, because that's the way I drank whiskey. And that's what I did. You know, the last time I did this, it took almost 2.5 hours. So in the event that you get tired before I do, feel free to leave. And by the way, I'm just kidding. I'm up on the mountain in Tennessee one time, and we're going to a meeting, and my sponsor drugged me up the hill, and I didn't want to go to begin with. And the guy is a speaker meeting, and he's been talking for an hour and a half on what it's like. And I go out for my third cigarette break, and I said to my sponsor, I said, "You know, Al, you always tell me we're exactly where we're supposed to be, doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing all the time. What the hell are we doing here listening to this bozo?" And he said, "Bill, you don't know what you might be doing if you weren't here. That's why you're here and not somewhere else." Food for thought. The amazing part of this program for me is Thursday I sat where Jonathan did, and life sucked. And I was really, really, really pissed. And it had to do with a whole bunch of stuff that's going on. And I just didn't like it, don't like it. And I came up with this really, really great idea. I thought I'd go to a bunch of meetings and share my feelings with a whole bunch of different people. And you know, when I was sitting where Jonathan is on Thursday morning, I was thinking, my God, I got to speak Saturday night, and I really and truly don't want to, because I don't have anything to share, because I'm pissed. I'm not happy with life. So I pony up and go to 3 meetings in a day, and call my sponsor and have a couple meals with him, and get together with some sponsees and do some walks in the wood and get to do some praying and stuff like that. And you know what? I feel better. And when I say I feel better, what I mean by that, my chest is not going like this. And see, this is where my alcoholism lives. And when it gets tighter and it gets stronger, it brings me like this. And I can't hear anything. And I can't feel anything except for the pressure and the tension. And what I find that, yeah, I can pray a little bit, and that'll help a little bit, because What all this is about secrets, and it's about stuff that's going on that I don't understand, and I'm scared. And so what I have to do is I have to find somebody who has the same disease that I do and share with them and find out what's going on, because I can't always see what's going on with me. Part of what I was talking about Thursday morning is I've been spending a tremendous amount of time in an oncology ward up in Greensboro, North Carolina. And I see people come in for their treatment and they leave worse than when they came in. And I think about how blessed I am, because this is my treatment, and when I leave this evening, I'll feel better. And if I'm going to have a progressive terminal disease, I want the one that tells me I ain't got it. Not the one that is doing some of the things that I've witnessed over the last few weeks. And I feel blessed to be an alcoholic. And you know, really and truly, I had 3 sips of a Budweiser once, got dizzy, went to a meeting, took the 3rd step, got a sponsor, and everything's been fine ever since. And I'm sure that that's the way you all have done it, and that's why we're here tonight. Wow. No. What I did is I drank a whole lot, and I messed up a whole bunch of things and hurt a whole lot of people and really screwed up my life. I screwed up my life to the point where I had a gun in my mouth more than I didn't. And somewhere in January of 1986, I had that gun, and I was sitting there and I said, this is it, I'm through. I'd actually worn a callus from the sight on the top of my mouth, because I couldn't take it anymore, because I couldn't figure out this thing called life, because I'd done everything right. I had done every single thing that everybody told me if I only did, then everything would be okay, and I was a miserable SOB. I really was. Angry, pissed off, and absolutely scared to death. One of the things I've come to understand, I don't know where the dog went. Okay, but the dog, if you take that dog and you put him in the corner and you come at him with a stick, he's going to growl and look real angry. He's not angry, man. He's scared. And that was me. I was scared. All the time, every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, unless I was drunk. So I get ready to blow my brains out. And I've told this before. The night before, I had read an article in Reader's Digest, and it talks about how inconsiderate people are who kill themselves because of the mess they leave. And I have the gun in my mouth, and I look behind me, and I have white stucco walls in my office. And I think, my God, what a mess. And I say that world-famous prayer that I have heard so many people say when they stand up here. God, I don't know what to do. Please help me. And I picked up the phone and I called this lady who had been bugging the hell out of me for over a year to get some help. And she was a nurse in a treatment center. Treatment center was 2 miles from my office. I'm grateful it wasn't 3, because I probably couldn't have made it. Went into that place, and this little lady met me at the door, and she said, sit down, we're going to do an evaluation. I haven't had anything to drink yet today, but I still blew a 2-3. That's the way I drank. Quart a day, every day. And we sat down and she did an assessment, and she said, son, I believe you qualify. I think we've got a bed for you this afternoon. And I said, thank you very much. I said, I'm going to go home and think about it. And Aileen was about 4'11" and weighed about 87 pounds, dripping wet. And she came out from behind that desk, and I was standing there, and I was heading towards the door. And she slugged me in the chest as hard as she could. And she said, you stupid SOB, don't you know that if you leave here, you'll die? My first surrender. I sat down in a chair and I looked at her and I said something that I had never said before in my life. I said, I don't know what to do. Tell me what to do. And she said, well, what you're going to do is you're going to call your wife and you'll tell her you'll see her in 30 days. You're going to call your employer and tell them if they keep your job, you'll see them in 30 days. And I did. And I proceeded to detox for about 10 days and shook a whole lot. And they said one of the great parts of my detoxification was I wanted to get on with the program. I wanted to graduate. I wanted to get out of treatment. So I would come into the group sessions and share with them and help them out. And then the Valium would kick in and I would slide out of my chair and I'd be laying on the floor and they would pick me up and they'd put me back in the bed. And I did that for about a week and a half. And you know the amazing thing, when I left that treatment center, they never called me so they could find out what to do with the people who were still there. I couldn't believe it. I really and truly couldn't. And so I grab a hold of this thing and they told me I had to have a sponsor to get out of treatment. I got one. They told me I had to go to a meeting every single day for 90 days. I did it. And 30 years ago yesterday, I picked up a 6-month chip. And I am really, really impressed with myself. I really and truly am. And I have my second wife with me at the time, and we're walking back in this little town in Tennessee from the meeting, and I've got my chip. I've been sober 6 months. And she looks over at me and she smiles and she says, you know, Bill, she said, you were a son of a bitch when you were drinking, and you're a son of a bitch now. And she said, there is nothing I would like better than for you to get out of our house. And I thought, oh, wait a minute. That's not how they told me in the recovery meetings this was going to go. We were going to go to couples therapy and we were going to live happily ever after. And I ran to my sponsor's house and I was crying and I was going, what in the world's going on? And he says, Bill, those are consequences of your actions from days before. And it's not her fault. And I immediately figured out that I had better do something, and the best thing for me to do was find somebody in AA who was of the female sex who would understand the difficulties that I was going through in my marriage. And I know you're going to find it amazing, but I did. And the best thing that I could possibly think of was to move her in to the apartment that I was living in while my wife and I were going through a divorce. And this is what I did all my life. And it came totally unraveled. I mean, it fell apart like something I had never seen, and I wasn't drinking and I did not know what to do. And every single day it got worse, and I'm going, what in the world is going on? I'm trying to get sober, and life really stinks. And it smelled so bad that wife number 2 had the ability and the attorney's connections to take me to court and take everything that I own, justifiably so. She should have, and she did. So here I am. I'm coming up on 2 years now, and from walking into this program with everything that I hear everybody talk about, if only they had, they wouldn't get drunk. And 2 years later, I don't have a thing. And the gun's looking awful good again. It really and truly is. Because this thing's just not working. And the thing is, it was working. But it wasn't working at Bill's speed. See, the challenge that I've had all of my life, and now that I'm getting old enough to slow down, it's beginning to make sense. I want what I want, and I want it right now. And I do not know how y'all get sobriety, but that's not how sobriety came to me. It came slowly. You know, the promises say sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. I never got the quickly part. Didn't drink, but I sure did grow, and I sure did hurt. And I have this great sponsor, and he's 16, 17 years sober, and I'm asking him what I need to do. How am I going to do this thing? I don't know what to do. And he says, well, I can't answer your questions, Bill, because I'm going to treatment. And I said, what are you talking about? You're going to treatment. You've been sober for 16 years. He said, I haven't had a drink in 16 years, but sobriety has a lot more to do with than not drinking. He said, I'll see you in 30 days. And I went, once again, I trust somebody, and what do, man? They haul on me, they leave me, and I'm left with nothing to do but hold the bag. Long story short, he went to Father Martin's treatment center in Ashley, Maryland. He came back on a Sunday. I left for Father Martin's treatment center on a Monday. And one of the greatest things that ever happened to me, I had a whole bunch of skilled people that took me apart and put me back together, sort of. And they help me to look at the patterns of my life, which I now understand are revealed in steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, but I couldn't get to that. And they told me that there was a possibility that in addition to my drinking, that I may want to take a look at my relationships and the fact that I had been in a relationship my entire life with somebody of the opposite sex since I was 15 years old. And I still remember the counselor looking at me and saying, "Bill, when's the last time you spent a year by yourself?" And I said, "Do what?" I said, "What? Define by yourself." She said, "You know what I mean?" I said, "No, I don't know what you mean. I ain't never been by myself. And I've been married a bunch of times, and in between I had a whole bunch of other things going on and everything like that, and I don't understand by yourself." She said, "No dating, no sex, no nothing, 1 year." I said, "Whoa. Don't you think we're overreacting to the situation a little bit?" And she said, "I'm not, you are." And she said, "What we want you to do is we want you to go to a halfway house, and we want you to attend only male meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we want you to remain abstinent for 1 year." In case you're not following along, that's sexually abstinent for 1 year. Now, wait a minute. I'm not drinking. I'm not doing that. And I can't find God no matter what I do. And I keep going to meetings, and it gets better, but then it gets worse, and then it gets better, and it gets worse. So they send me off to California to go to a halfway house, and I'll be danged if that's not where I found God. Because I had never been so miserable in all my life. And the only thing I could do is cry. And I couldn't stand to have any of the guys in the halfway house see me cry. So I'd get up real early and go to the park, which was down the street from the halfway house, and sit on the bench and cry, and then come back and say, "Yeah, I'm okay." And I came back here after that experience. And I came into this building. And I knew that I needed to get a job, and I needed to have a place to live. And my parents were kind enough to give me a key to their house. So that solved the first one. And I was sitting where Kirk is one night, and I'm thinking, I got to get a job. And the guy who's leading the discussion's a really nice guy and everything like that. I said, I got to get a job. And I got that interview in the morning, and, man, I got to have a job. I don't know what God's doing. How come God is not helping me with this situation? So I go home that night and I pray. And my sponsor back in Tennessee used to say to me, he said, "Bill, when you pray relentlessly, understand that God heard you the first time. But if you need to say it over and over again for you, that's okay. He won't mind. She won't mind." And I did that all night long, and I got up the next morning. I went on the interview, and the guy who was standing here chairing the meeting was sitting on the other side of the desk. He was a sales manager. And I said, "Whoa." I said, "I believe we have a mutual friend." He said, "Who's that?" I said, "Bill Wilson." He said, "You're hired." And now's when it gets real sticky, because it's August, and I'm doing okay, and I'm pretty much finished with that celibacy and everything, and I'm kind of wondering what I'm going to do. And one day, it's real hot like it was today, and there is a lady down at the far end of the Honda dealership, and the boss says somebody has to go down and talk to her. And I say, "I'm not going," and my buddy at the sales office says, "I'm not going," and the boss says, "Somebody better go now." So we decide to flip a coin, and I lost. And if you ever think that God doesn't have a sense of humor, the lady at the lot who bought the car is my wife of 27 years. You get what you pray for. We dated for 60 days before we got married. And it has been quite an experience. It really and truly has. And things began to change, and they began to get pretty cool. They really and truly did. And spent a lot of time in these rooms, in this room right here, and decided I need to live at the beach, and went down and lived at the beach and worked in a treatment facility, and really having a good time. I really and truly was. And gentleman in the back there, who has been my close friend and companion and now my sponsor for a number of years, is having his 10th anniversary, and he asked me to come up from the beach and give him his chip. And being the kind, considerate, compassionate, no longer angry dude that I am, that's a lie. I've been in therapy about that stuff forever, and I probably always will be. And I'm sitting in the Bronson over in Southern Pines, and I'm getting ready to give him his chip, and I think how stupid the chip system is. And it won't go out of my head. It won't leave. And I'm going, this is a day-at-a-time program, but we keep collecting these things, and you know, what's it about? Today I understand it's about the people who are seeing it work, and it's a wonderful experience. It really and truly is, but I couldn't get that night. So I get up to give Phil his chip, and I tell the group off. And I tell them how stupid they are, that they're doing this with these chips. And I get one of the biggest resentments you've ever seen in your life, and I'm 10 years sober, and I walk away from Alcoholics Anonymous. Because I don't need y'all anymore. I've figured it out. You know, I'm doing this spiritual thing. I'm praying, I'm talking to God, and I'm exploring different things, and it's working and everything. But I don't need to go to these meetings anymore. And I do not go to a meeting for 6 years. During those 6 years, I quit my job as a substance abuse counselor and go to work as a bartender. Smooth transition right there. Nobody picked up on it but me. And they would always say, buy one for yourself, Bill. And I'd say, that's okay, just give me the money. They say, no, really, you need to have. I said, no, I really don't need to have a drink, trust me. And I go out into what I call the spiritual desert. And I have been there more than once, and I will go again because it's part of the way I do things. And I can't find God, and God can't find me, and I don't go to AA. And what I tell people, and this is the truth, during those 6 years that I did not go to a meeting, I talked to Phil on a regular basis, I prayed every day, I meditated every day, and everybody in the world was an asshole. Everybody. My wife, my boss, my customers, anybody I saw, they were a jerk. Except me, I was okay. So I get really, really upset, and I say, honey, we're going to sell the house, we're going to ride in the pickup truck, and we're going to go out west, and we're going to go camping and backpacking and fishing. And she said, okay. So we sold the house and took off. And I get out to Idaho, and you have to go back in my story a little bit and understand that Father Martin's, one of the things that their whole philosophy is about is that relapse is a process, just like recovery is a process. Relapse ends when I take that drink. And they devised this scientific system where I could actually chart where I was in those warning signs. And I still have this stuff up here, and I'm out in Idaho, and I'm looking at these warning signs, and I'm going, Bill, dude, you're about ready to get drunk. And I am, and I know it, and I am powerless to do anything about it. I can't go to a meeting, I can't call anybody. My disease has such a grip on me that I can barely show up each day for work because I want to drink. And I'm sitting in the office one night, and I'm having a conversation with Susan, and we're arguing over the telephone because I'm out there, she's back here, and I'm in the state park in Idaho, and she says, what are you doing out there? And I said, why don't you come out here? And she says, I don't want to be with you right now because you're really a jerk. And I'm in the office because that's the only place there was a phone, and I hear the volunteer couple talking to the manager of the park, asking for the weekend off so they can go home and pick up their 20-year medallions. That smells familiar. It's probably some of those stupid coins that I got so mad about years ago. So I walk out and I say, friends of Bill Wilson, huh? And they just bubble, yes, and they're really happy and everything. And I'm going, oh, no, they really are. They drank the Kool-Aid. And Roland, who is about yay tall, looks up at me and he says, and I bet you were at one time, weren't you, Bill? And I said, well, yeah, I've been to AA. I used to go all the time. I just haven't been in a while. He said, well, you're going to go with me this afternoon to a men's meeting. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm fine, just fine. And remember, this is the guy who was on the phone thinking about drinking 15 minutes beforehand. And he says, no, you don't understand what I'm saying, Bill. You're going to a meeting with me. I will pick you up at 5. The meeting's at 5:30. It's a men's group. We meet in downtown Sandpoint, Idaho. I don't. And now, Roland, you're not getting this. I'm not going. So 5 o'clock, here comes Roland in his little Volkswagen, and all he does is just lean on the horn. And I'm in my RV, and all I can hear is this Volkswagen horn. And I know he's going to stop eventually. No. He doesn't. And so I say, the hell with this, and I get my clothes on, and I get dressed, and I get in the car, and we ride down there. He says, you're really going to enjoy this meeting. They're a really good bunch of guys. You really like it. And I go, yeah, you're drinking that Kool-Aid, dude. Okay. And I'm here to tell y'all one of the greatest spiritual experiences of my life. I walked into a room with 15 men, lumberjacks, some of the biggest, hardest, meanest son of a bitches I've ever seen in my life. And I slid into a chair at the far end of that table, and I was home. And it was without a doubt one of the great, I still goosebump. And those guys picked me up and they put me back together, and life has been very interesting ever since. I am still hanging around with some of those guys. And it reignited that flame that was almost gone. Only in retrospect, only in looking back, do I understand how close in different times of my life I have come to drinking. And the guys that I got sober with in Tennessee used to say to me, do not drink even if your ass falls off. Pick it up, bring it to a meeting, and we'll sew it back on for you. And they did, time and time again. And see, those guys were really, really old. They were in their 60s, man. And they'd been sober for 20, 30 years. And I thought, how in the hell did they do this? Because I was sitting on the other side of the table reading the same book as they were, but I wasn't getting it the way that they got it. And what I understand is you don't get it till you get it. And it takes a while. And it's okay because it's worth it. It is really and truly amazing. The more that I do this thing, the better it gets. Now, I need to clarify that. It does not mean that life goes away. Life is still life. And life can be really, really kick-ass hard. It really and truly can. My first sponsor told me a long time ago, he said, if you think you have a problem and you want to drink, remember the drink will make it worse. And I have been around this thing long enough to learn that that is the gospel truth. Whatever's going on in my life, if I want to make it worse, all I have to do is pick up a drink. So I get a hold of these guys, they get a hold of me, and here I am at 16, 17 years without a drink, and I meet this guy, and he introduces me to a whole new world of God and understanding and things of that, and Eastern, just amazing stuff. And I really get excited, and I start working the steps again, and I start sponsoring people, and I'm going back and forth between Idaho and North Carolina, and it's really good. It really and truly is. The entire time that I'm doing this, I'm still hanging out with Phil, and we're still talking on the phone, and we're still doing these things. And the reason why I bring that up is that's almost 28 years that he and I have been doing that. That's what this fellowship is about for me. Those are the relationships that I'm talking about today. And the old commercial about it being priceless? Yeah, it is. You know, I have an individual on this planet who knows every single thing there is to know about me today. Not most things, not pretty much the stuff that I want him to know, everything. And to say that he and I have grown up together is pretty much a fact. It really and truly is. Because we have an insatiable desire for recovery and the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. So everything is cooking along, and you know, things are good, y'all. They really and truly are, and some things on the home front change, and I have to tell the guys out in Idaho I can't come back for a while because I got to help my wife do some stuff and take care of some in-laws and outlaws and all that kind of thing. And that was a number of years ago, and I did that reasonably willing. And I understand that there's different degrees of willingness. I used to think that willingness was kind of like a black and white thing. It's not. It comes in degrees. One of the greatest things that guy out in Idaho who taught me about these different aspects of meditation and everything shared with me is the world is not black and white, it's gray. And he said the sooner that you understand that it is indeed gray and not right or wrong, black or white, and that it is a circle and not a line, you'll have a much better time. And he was right, because it took an awful lot of pressure off of me, because I was taught I always had to do the right thing. And see, if you listen to what I say, I called tails. It came up heads. I didn't do the right thing, but I met the woman I'm married to for 27 years, so maybe the universe, it was the right thing to do. And see, that's the thing that's so amazing about as I do this walk and as I work the steps. What appears today is not necessarily so. Everything that I'm telling y'all tonight is a story. It's from my perception. I think it's pretty much true. I can honestly tell you that after 30 years of continued abstinence, I can still tell a lie. And my favorite one that I always use as an example is, honey, do these pants make my butt look big? No, ma'am, they don't. Looks good. Just a suggestion. Doesn't have to be that way, but seems to work for me. I'm doing this thing and I'm having a good time and I'm living up in my thriving metropolis. I live in Robbins, North Carolina, and I've lived there for 10 years. And I've been assured that in another 50 years they might say hello to me and welcome me into the clan. I don't know yet. Verdict's still out. You know you're in a small town when you're traveling back and forth 6 months out of the year, and you're working in your yard, and a guy gets out of his truck and he comes across the yard and he says, "Ain't it time for you to go to Idaho?" And I go, "Who are you?" "Oh, well, I live down the road back on..." I said, "Okay, got it. That's where I live, and that's how we do it." And I get a wild hair one day, and it's snowing, and you need to understand something. When it snows in Idaho, it's different than when it snows in North Carolina. And one of the things we used to do in Idaho is we used to shovel the roof so that the roof would not fall in. And I'm not getting the attention that I feel I need from everybody in the world, and I'm getting the big lip, and I'm getting kind of pouty and everything like that. So I decide I'm going to climb up on my metal roof and shovel it. If anybody has anything from this evening, I highly recommend you don't do that. Regardless of whatever I say for the rest of the time or what I've said so far, do not get up on a metal roof with snow and ice on it in work boots. Not a good idea. I get airborne. And I hit 30 feet down, and I hurt myself really bad. Really, really bad. And being trained in the world of macho male, I get up. And my wife, who is a nurse, says, "Please, God, Bill, don't get up. You're going to hurt yourself worse." And I get up, and I can still hear Coach Smith saying, "Shake it off, Bill, shake it off." I'm going, "Whoa, Coach, this is a bad one. It really is. It ain't shaking." And I go into the house and I said, "Well, maybe we should ride to the hospital." And we get the 1.5 miles to downtown, and I said, "Maybe we should call the ambulance." And the ambulance shows up. They can't get me out of the car. They finally get me out of the car. They finally get me in the ambulance. The roads are covered with snow. And we get down to Moore Regional, and we get into the ER. And they say, "Here's the deal, dude. You have fractured yourself, you've fractured your pelvis, and you've torn 2 arteries, and we can't get a helicopter to get you out, and you're going to bleed to death if we don't try an experimental procedure. What would you like to do?" I said, "Wait a minute, you want to run that by me again slowly?" "Well," he said, "I'll do it slowly. If we don't operate on you, you're going to die." You know, us alcoholics, man, it's easy to make a decision. I said, "Let's go." Now, this whole thing takes about 14 hours. And every time I come out of the pain, I look over and my sponsor is holding my wife's hand. This is on Valentine's Day, y'all. His lobster and steak dinner is getting really cold. And he never left till they finally transferred me to ICU. So they tell me that I am going to live and that the operation was a success, and I'm pretty dang excited about that. Not really. I'm feeling guilty and shameful and remorseful and not sure I really and truly want to go on. And I'm laying in the ICU, and I'm not really sure I want to do this. I mean, very, very seriously considering not trying. And my wife calls one of my sponsees in San Diego, California, who has been through multiple automobile accidents and things like that. And she hands me her cell phone, and Damon on the other side says, "Don't turn the people away and do it, Bill." I said, "Okay." Y'all, that's nothing but divine intervention. That is the universe, God working in my life for me, with me, whichever way I choose to look at it. So I go home and I lay in bed for 100 days. And I'm not saying just during daylight hours or just at night. I lay in the bed for 100 days while I heal. And the reason why I say with great pride that I am a member of the Common Cause group in Carthage, North Carolina, is because they brought a meeting to my house every week. And Phil tells the story in such a manner. When they first started bringing the meeting, he said, "Bill couldn't wait for us to leave." And then it got to the point where Bill didn't want us to leave. But that's this fellowship, y'all. I mean, these people, and I'm not just saying 1 or 2, I'm saying 6 people every Tuesday night in my living room with me laying in the bed, and we're having a meeting. That's the way this thing works in my life. It really and truly, it does. It always has, and it always will. My favorite story of all time with all those guys that helped me get sober, because the vast majority of them were farmers, and they had coveralls, and they had big boots, and they spit in cups, and that's the way they did things. And I remember walking out one night early on, and I was kind of whimpering, and I had the big lip and everything like that. And this fellow, who was substantially taller than I and outweighed me by about 75 pounds, put his big old arm around me, and he said, "Fella, you want to know the difference between you and me?" And at that point in time, I said, "Well, you're going to tell me anyway, so go ahead and tell me." He said, "You're hoping this program works." I know it does. And see, those are the things that I'm talking about that I just blew it off at the time. But that's probably one of the biggest things that I finally understood. If I was painstaking, because that's what it says in the promises. It says, if I am painstaking about this phase of my development, I'll be amazed before I'm halfway through. That means I got to take pain the way that I look at it. That is the motivator. That is the teacher. And it works. You know, I'll never forget the first 5th step that I did. And I did it with an Episcopal priest. And I was so excited because I knew that I had done such a job that when I got through, Buckley was going to look at me and he was going to say, my God, Bill, that was the greatest 5th step I ever heard in my life. And he turned and he looked at me after we'd been in his church for a while and he said, you know, Bill, he said, you got a good start. And he was so right. And he said, Bill, you have the 2 key ingredients: courage and honesty. And that's what it takes to get sober. I can't do it without those things. I need to be honest, I need to be open-minded, and I need to have a whole lot of willingness in varying degrees at various times of day and weeks and months and years. But I have to have the courage to walk through the pain when I want to drink and I don't. And you know, I came to this room 27, 28 years ago, and there was a little old lady who used to sit in the middle of the room, and every time it came her turn to share, she would say, well, I just get up in the morning and I turn my will and my life over to the care of God and everything's fine. And I would go, I want to kill that woman. I want to just beat her. And the thing that really is funny is she was right. Because on the days that I choose to do that, understand what I just said. On the days that I choose, it's pretty good. It really and truly is. I had a therapist one time, and he said to me, every time we would sit down in a session, he would look at me and he would say, so Bill, how are you choosing to look at that this morning? And I would say, you don't understand, man. Let me tell you what's going on. Let me tell you what they're doing to me. And he would say, no, how do you choose to look at that today? And what he was saying is, do you choose to look at the glass half full or half empty? Do you choose to look at it as there is a solution or there's not? And see, every single situation in my life, there is a solution. And they're right there. How can that be? How in the world can that be? You know, I go through all of that and they did not know whether I would live. They did not know whether I would walk. And I can't even begin to tell you how much fun it is to sit in the middle of that room and walk up here. I can't even begin to tell you how much fun it is to go for a walk in the woods and not have my walker or my wheelchair with me. Go through all of this and I'll finish this up because I still remember that guy that took an hour and a half, man, and I can't stand that. You know, when I used to lecture for a living, they said, don't give it more than the ass can endure because the brain can't take it if you do. My buddy, the guy that I chose to commit to telling the truth to forever and ever, and having sat with me on Valentine's Day and with my wife and bringing meetings to my house, cannot stand it when I get all the attention. So he decides to blow his gallbladder out halfway between here and North Dakota. And he's calling me from the road and he says, what do you think I ought to do, Bill? And I said, I think you ought to go to the hospital, Phil. He did. In less than 12 weeks, they saved his life. And when he comes out of the recovery, guess who's sitting with his wife? What goes around comes around. It's a big circle. And you know, I highly, highly recommend that you grab a hold of this thing and just work it like your ass is on fire. Half measures avail me nothing. Absolutely nothing. If you want what we have and you're willing to go to any length to get it, then for God's sakes, go get it. The only thing I know for certain and for sure, secrets will kill me. Kill me. And I dumped a lot of secrets this week, and I feel a whole lot better. And if you feel like it, go for it. You know, I heard a man say 29 years ago, and he ended the way I'm going to end, and I thought it was the most stupid thing I'd ever heard in my life, and I know he's exactly right. I know that I don't know, and I'm glad I don't. But I do know this works. Thanks.